It's time to hop into the next lesson in this C++ course, so stand by. This video is about to start.
This is the savage scientist Ed right here, and I'm Uber in a police car.
What's up, folks? You already know who this is because you saw the intro, and if you haven't, then this is the savage scientist Ed, and we about to get back into our C++ in 31 days. And note, it might show 15, 16 topics, but we're gonna cover those. We're gonna have more than that. So let's get into the next part of this course. So we have a challenge here that I left you with. I was asking you, how did you modify your program? What did you do to it last time? So how did you modify Hello World? Did you get it to print some type of unique statement? Tell me about that experience. And jump ahead to 4 minutes into this video if you want a more detailed explanation of this solution. Let's look at where we are here in the course. So we already covered C++. We already got our introduction to C++, setting up dev C++ and VS Code. We already got that installed. We passed that. So we talked a little bit about our first C++ program. That was the Hello World that you just got done modifying. And while talking about our first C++ program, I went into a brief introduction to some C++ keywords and C++ syntax. So now we're on user input.
Quick FYI, we did mention compiler also.
So here's the index for this video. And jump to the topic that you are most interested in, or just continue watching it from this point on till you get to the end. So now it's time to start getting user input. So now it's time for us to start talking about Iostream. And if you don't remember, let's get our code back on the screen from last time so you could see what this Iostream is all about. So here it is. We have dev C++ back in action. And we're about to open our previous program. And here it is, Hello World, just the way we left it. And let me bring this down one line. So here it is, our Hello World program. So we left off talking about the return function and all that stuff. So we're gonna look in details at, we are about to dive a little deeper into Iostream. Iostream is a part of the C++ programming language. It's part of the STL, stands for Standard Template Library. So this is a big deal here. So we're gonna look specifically at two functions in Iostream. We're gonna look at CIN and COUT. So CIN is basically what you use, and it's right here. CIN is what you use to receive. Let me do some receiving hands to receive data from the user. COUT is when we pushing it to your screen. So when you see that box pop up, boom, there it is. That is COUT in action. And these format specifiers, these overloaded operators, these are basically shift operators. We're gonna get into shift operators and all that stuff later, but we're gonna just use it in the simplest form using these. So let's take a look a little more at our program. So here it is. This is our program. So you could do a lot with this thing. So let's go up and just put a little code in here. So let's see here. So as I told you, you could change what you say here. You could change that from Hello World to Goodbye World. Yep. So what we printing right here in between these double quotes, that's gonna be printed to the screen. So this line prints to the screen. And we already discussed comments. This is a comment. So what about printing to a new line? So what if I do this? On a new, we got stuff on a new line, right? So before you move on, guess what you think this line is gonna do? What do you think is gonna happen? Goodbye World, stuff on a new line. And once you're ready to move on, or once you unpause the video, let's move on. So push F11, don't hit control. Push F11 on your keyboard. And compile it. So another thing you could do in this compiler is you could float this window. So if you right click on the window while it's in dock mode and you go to floating, these two options down here, floating project manager will make it so this thing floats. And if you select, let's go back, floating report window, now your results from compilations and all that stuff is going to float. That's just a little side note. So here's the results of our program. Let's go back and run it again. Project 1. So as you can see, we got stuff on the new line that's actually printed on the same right next to the D in hello world. We start with the S. You see that right here. So let me show you what actually happened. This COUT statement, even though it's on a new line, it is printing the stuff, or it's printing the next string of characters right after the termination of the last string. So when this string ended at the D, it immediately started printing this. So this is the same thing as doing this, cutting it and putting it right here. That is essentially the same thing. So let's run an F11 and see that it's not any different. So now let's run our program again. See, same thing. So let's fix this now. So we want this on a new line, right? So what we're gonna do is we're going to put the backslash in right here between the D and S. So there it is. So let's see what's going to happen with our modified code. Push F11. And now let's run our code again. Right here in the console. And now we have goodbye world, stuff on a new line, on a different line. That's what we wanted. So now it's time to talk about this. This is an escape character in Iostream, or when you're using Iostream in the C++ language. This has a special purpose. So the only way, so the thing is now, how do you print a backslash? So let's take a look at a list of some of these things. So that's the new line one that we just talked about. And here goes some more. And here's the backslash right here. If you want to print a backslash, just backslash. Then you're just going to type 2 backslashes for 1. That's it. So same thing with the question mark, the print the quotations and all that stuff. And here's a good one. Let's do the audible bell. Try and make this thing a little more interesting for people here. So let's get our code back on the screen. So we're gonna just change this to new line, and then we're gonna put an audible bell at the end. So let's save it. Control S. F11. So did you hear it that time? It made that Windows chime sound. So let's run our program multiple times in the console so you could really hear this. See what we got here. You heard it? So there it is. So we were able to make it so it made a little noise. And normally, that's kind of a sign of some error or something. But in this case, we made the noise on purpose by using the alert. So that's our alert. So there's a carriage return. And what a carriage return is just like hitting return on the keyboard. So can you tell me what this line is going to print? Ready for it? Let's compile it. Hit Control S to save first, and now F11. And now let's take a look at our results right here in the console window. Let's hit Project 1, and there it is. We have all this crap on the same line, even though the results showing it on 2 lines. So ENDL, this line right here, forces the results of the next COUT statement to its own line. So it's the same thing as doing that. I mean, that is what it's gonna look like. If you take this off, it's gonna print on the same line if you remove ENDL. So I hope that was helpful for you. So now let's take a look at getting user input. So let's change. So for one thing, in order to get user input, what? You got to ask a question, right? So let's ask the user a question. What do you think we should ask our user? See how I'm changing up the statements here? How many cell phones do you own? Okay, so now we want the results, right? So now I'm gonna print, oh, okay, you own, oh, what? How are we gonna get the input? How are we gonna get how many cell phones this person owns? Let's do that right now. You own, so we haven't gotten to variables yet, but just take my word that we're gonna talk about it. So if you wanna capture an integer value from the customer or from the user, we're gonna have to find something to hold it in, and we're gonna create an integer value, and we're gonna call it count. See that? We just created a holder for our phones, an integer value called count. Holds integer value of cell phones. So now we have to put in a new statement. So now we're about to get user input. So we're going to type in CIN, and we're going to use the greater than signs. I mean, it depends on if it's greater than, because if it's this side, it's greater than, but if you're on this side, it's less than. So we not in the math video yet, so we're gonna just go with that. So now we're gonna type in the integer value that we want to take the user input and drop it in this value called count. So that's it. So let's say we would have created count, we would have had another integer called water and another int called cones. Then we could use count, cones, or water, because all of this is int. So we can just go with count, and that's what's going to hold our integer value. So count goes right here, an integer value. So let's see what's going to happen. So Control S for save. Control S. And now let's compile it with F11. 0 errors. That's what we're talking about here. 0 warnings. Now let's go to the console tab, and we're about to run this thing again. Just push arrow up, and it's gonna run the last command. How many cell phones you own? Let's say I own 98 cell phones. Oh, okay, you own. So what? Where is my data? Now, how do you print our 98 cell phones? You wanted to say, oh, okay, you own X or count cell phones. So to do that, we're going to use our COUT statement. We're going to use our COUT function again, because this is actually a function. And we're going to use COUT one more time. And this time, instead of putting something in quotation marks, we can just drop the value that we want here. And we're going to put count right here. So see that? Count. So now let's run this again. Control S to save. And now F11 to compile. Now we got our results about to pop up on this screen when you hit the console tab. Hit up. And there it is. So how many cell phones do you own? Let's see, I own 66 cell phones. And here it is. Oh, okay, you own 66. So isn't that looking a little better? So what about, let's just say you own 66. 66 what? You own 66 cones or whatever else I had. What I had up here? Water. 66 waters. So we're going to print now more text. 66 phones. And now you want to force it on a new line? You could drop a new line right here. Now we got a new line to go with it. So now we're gonna hit Control S to save. And now we're about to hit F11 to compile. And we're gonna open up the console tab right here. There it is. How many cell phones you own? 76 cell phones. So now we have it. 76. And look how look at this. 76. The 6 is right after so we're going to go straight from 76 to phones. So if you want to have a space after your 6 and 76, or if you want a space right after how many phones you have, you're going to put that space right here. And now we have a space before we start the word phones. So it's just like having a space after and a space before how many phones we have. So that's how this CIN statement just received input from the user in the form of how many cell phones the person has. So now it's time to print that right here using the variable count that holds the count of cell phones. And we're going to drop that, pow, put it right there in the middle of this statement. And that's it. That is all we're talking about. So I guess you made it to the end of this video. And here's the challenge. I want you to recreate this using what we just learned. You should be able to successfully create a program. And what it's going to do is take in some value that you're going to call your bank balance and print your bank balance that you indicated into the screen, or just print your bank balance. I mean, I know that's not how banks work, but we're going to fix that later when we get into control statements. So we're going to talk about in the next video how to create these variables. What is int? We're going to talk about other data types. And I suggest you go back into my YouTube channel. Check out Data Structures 1, where I talk about data types and stuff like that. Be prepared for it. Data types and variable naming conventions. And that's going to be our next video. So that's your challenge for today. So now, till I make my next video, check out these bloopers. Oh shit, just found the keyboard. Alright, so in this blooper, you got a chance to see where that red line come from. And also you probably noticed that my terrible spelling made it through the editing process. So you probably see that I spelled integer wrong. Cause that's what dictionary's for, right? So stay tuned for the next video.